Determining exactly what separates rigorous science from non-science is the foundational epistemological debate in marketing and the social sciences. Classical demarcation relies on specific criteria to draw this boundary. First, a field requires a distinct subject matter. Second, it requires a systematic classification of that subject. The third requirement is the search for underlying causal regularities. The fourth is strict adherence to the scientific method. This method centers on intersubjective verification. A claim gains scientific status only when subjected to open, empirical testing, allowing others to confirm or reject findings. Relativists challenge this boundary, arguing that no fundamental difference exists between the sciences and the non-sciences. They propose a concept called Science 2, which asserts that science is merely whatever society chooses to call science by consensus. Under this view, all ways of knowing are granted equal validity. If society defines science by consensus rather than a shared objective standard of evidence, the concept of empirical refutation disappears. Without a yardstick to measure claims against, a theory cannot be proven wrong. It is simply one opinion among many. We can test this relativist framework by setting up a theoretical scenario, comparing a medical doctor's diagnosis with a palm reader's diagnosis. Let's assign absolute stakes to the scenario. Both practitioners are asked to diagnose a patient for bone cancer. In a strict relativist framework, the oncologist's diagnosis holds the exact same epistemic warrant as the palm reader's. Weak-form relativists attempt to avoid this conclusion by admitting that society should privilege the medical diagnosis. But this admission creates a logical trap. By privileging medicine, the relativist acknowledges that the doctor's findings are more trustworthy. This implies that the verification methods of medicine are inherently superior to those of palmistry. Conceding that superior verification methods exist destroys the relativist premise. If science has better tools for justifying its claims, then the demarcation line between science and non-science is real. Because the relativist argument fails under basic scrutiny, we must investigate the historical myths qualitative researchers use to justify attacking scientific demarcation. In the current academic landscape, qualitative researchers frequently use the claim that positivism is dead to dismiss quantitative research. The label positivist has become a tool for dismissal rather than an accurate philosophical descriptor of how modern researchers actually work. To find the reality, we have to look back to the Vienna Circle of the 1920s. Logical positivism was a highly specific, strict philosophical movement. The first major myth is the equation of positivist philosophy with quantitative statistical methods. Auguste Comte, who originated the term positivism in the 19th century, actually opposed the use of statistics in sociology. Positivism is a doctrine about epistemology and the verification of meaning. It does not mandate the use of mathematics or specific research designs. Conflating math with positivism reveals a historical misunderstanding that undermines modern critiques of quantitative methodology. The second myth is the assumption that positivists placed a high priority on identifying causal linkages. The logical positivists were deeply influenced by David Hume's skepticism regarding induction. Because of this skepticism, positivists viewed cause as a metaphysical concept that could not be verified. They restricted themselves to observable functional relationships and explicitly avoided the search for real causes. The third myth is the belief that positivists were Laplacian determinists who viewed the world as a predictable machine. In reality, the Vienna Circle was led by physicists who fully embraced the indeterminism of quantum mechanics. They adopted the Copenhagen view, which asserted that only probabilistic prediction, not deterministic certainty, was possible for science. They rejected the rigid Newtonian machine metaphor to create a philosophy capable of modeling an inherently uncertain universe. There is a profound historical irony in critics attributing a deterministic machine metaphor to the very philosophers who sought to dismantle it. Attributing determinism and causality to positivism reverses the historical facts. It shows that positivism bashing relies on a fabricated narrative. The fourth myth is the accusation that positivists reified unobservable latent concepts. Positivists were radical anti-realists. They demanded that if a concept could not be directly observed and verified, it had to be expunged from science. Their strict verifiability principle banned unobservable constructs from theoretical models entirely. Contrast that with a structural equation model, the standard tool in modern quantitative research. Researchers use these models specifically to measure unobservable concepts like brand equity or consumer attitude. By systematically measuring unobservables, modern marketing researchers are violating the most fundamental rule of positivism. The philosophy they actually follow is scientific realism, which allows for the testing of unobservable entities to gain genuine knowledge about the world. Because mainstream quantitative researchers embrace causality, unobservables, and realism, labeling them as positivists is factually incorrect. We can reject the claim that qualitative and quantitative methods are incommensurable rival paradigms. Science does not require a single dominant paradigm. Different methodologies have always coexisted to address different stages of inquiry. These methods represent parts of a unified process. The first half is the context of discovery. Qualitative methodologies excel here, providing the tools for generating new hypotheses and identifying the right questions to ask. Those ideas then move into the second half of the process, the context of justification. Quantitative methodologies function in this context, applying rigorous empirical testing to determine if those generated hypotheses are valid. Moving past the fabricated paradigm war creates a more rigorous, combined approach that improves the quality of all social science research. It is time to end the rhetorical bashing of positivism and focus on methodological clarity. Deliberately misusing historical philosophy is a form of academic sophistry that fundamentally degrades objective reasoning. Communities of academic researchers hold a fiduciary duty to the truth. This integrity is the only bridge maintaining trust between the scientific community and society. Safeguarding the rigorous definitions of scientific methodology is the only way to ensure the future legitimacy of the social sciences.